Donald Trump has won the election to be the next president of the United States. He will likely also control the Senate and the House, or at least his party. In this video, we're going to talk about what this might mean for Ukraine, whether it might be forced into a capitulation, and we'll talk about the developments along the front line and what has happened behind them. All of this in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainians have struck the Caspian Sea port with a drone. As you can see here, it hits one of the ships. This was actually a Gepard-class frigate. The report here is also that the GOR was that. They have hit it here, and just to illustrate, this is the ship that was hit. It can carry 8 caliber cruise missiles and launch them, and from the Caspian Sea they can also traverse through the Volga and the canals into the Azov Sea. All of this means that those are ships that can potentially launch cruise missiles against Ukraine. Let's switch to the developments along the front line. From Kursk, there are reports that there were first fights between North Korean soldiers and Ukrainians in the region of Kursk. The Ukrainians are saying the losses of the North Koreans are difficult to gauge as they are being shown to be Buryats according to their uniform and papers. So an Asian people of the Russian Federation. And they are mixed in with regular Russian soldiers. So for them, they aren't really able to say whether it's North Koreans or whether it's Eastern, a people of the Eastern Russian Empire, the Russian Federation, of the eastern part of it. A video is also published that is supposedly showing North Korean soldiers being taught basic Russian phrases to allow for a basic communication. If this is the way they actually plan to do it, the effectiveness of the North Koreans will obviously be significantly lower, as the irregular communication with their comrades on the Russian side won't be possible if they just know a couple of phrases. We've seen that in the past, that African recruits were used in the Russian army that didn't speak Russian, where there was no communication, and it seemed like they were just pointed in which direction to attack and then being told to attack. If this is obviously the use of the North Koreans, the effectiveness will be significantly lower. The Russians report that the Ukrainians did counterattacks at different positions. They don't say that the Ukrainians were successful. I don't see Ukrainian claims either. So from what I've seen, Kursk is unchanged over the last 2 days. We switch over to Kharkiv, the same, no change despite fighting, obviously. On the Eastern Front, we have a few changes. We have the Russians having advanced up to Pershnotravneve. Up here is the geolocation on the eastern part. Basically, this area has now fallen to the Russians over the past few days. And further south, they have advanced a little bit inside of Terny. Not really significant. We have them now here. In the past situation report, they were here. In the situation report before, they were here. But we see that they slowly advance inside of Terny. Now they are roughly here at this point. Further south, they have also advanced. Here they gained additional ground, but I'm not sure if they managed to still control it, as the video indicates that they suffered significant losses with this attack. But here they've advanced in the western direction and gained roughly 700 meters on ground, at least before they were defeated. That's all I have from the area north of the Seversky Donetsk. We switch to the southern part. Here again, a significant Russian mechanized attack reached this point here. We have the geolocation here as well. As you can see, this is further to the west than we have the front line by quite a fair margin. But at the same time, the original video, which I can't show you because a lot of corpses are visible in it, the original video shows that it seemingly was defeated. Not only did the Russians suffer painful losses in their heavy material, in the IFVs and main battle tanks, but they were also clearly withdrawing at the end of the video. So maybe the gray zone has to be expanded in this area, but from what I've seen, I cannot, by the best of, there's simply no way to say that the Russians actually gained additional ground. They reached a position further than before, but I do not see them having actually taken control of the area. Further south, no changes until Chasiv Yar, and there we have a Ukrainian counterattack having some minor successes, with the Ukrainians reaching up to here. But the Russians themselves have advanced up to here at this point down here, we have the geolocation of both of these events as well. This is the Ukrainian attack and this is the Russians where they have reached. Obviously, this is a far cry from what we see on the deep state map. So I have two maps here illustrating the situation, as you can see, where they judge the front line, and this is Krimi Caprice. I would agree with him that the front line is probably like this right now, and we have two more versions from pro-Ukrainian side also showing the situation in this region here. Further south, close to Toretsk, the Ukrainians were successful in a smaller counterattack at Nelipivka. We have the geolocation of this as well. They took a prisoner of war at this point, and this should have been roughly in this area here. They took a prisoner of war. They are clearly taking additional ground, having small local successes, but overall the situation has not really changed there either. We'll switch over further to the west towards Pokrovsk, and here we see the Russians on an additional advance towards the northwest of Selidove. They've reached this area here now. We can see it here. So the Russians have reached this point, and they've also advanced further to the further in the direction of Vorovske. This is also west of Selidove, where we see them now at this part here, where they've reached this point here, advancing further towards the west. So the Russians have, over the past few days, advanced in this direction and up to this point here, still extending their foothold in the Pokrovsk region. Further south, the Russians have entered the town of Stepanivka, which is down here. We have that geolocated as well. They are now on the other side of the reservoir, reaching over at this point. We see the Ukrainian pocket here collapsing slowly towards the west. I expect, as I said in the past, this is an organized withdrawal from the Ukrainians here due to the threat from the north, the east, and the south in this position. Further south in the Vuleda region, the Russians have advanced further inside of Antonivka. We have them now here. As you can see, they're slowly creeping forward in the town. We had them previously in Antonivka already, but further to the east. So they are advancing slowly in this direction, and they are now in the west of Trudove here, almost having reached the road here. And this means that they are roughly at this point here. I'm sorry, this was the wrong one. They're roughly at this point here, having reached to this point. So they're extending their foothold south of Konstantinopolske as well, advancing in these directions here too. I have one more change in territory, and that is in the area of Orekhiv, west of Novodanilivka. Here the Russians have recently advanced towards the north. They are now at this point here, and as you can see, those are the lines that the tree lines that are like this here, like waves, let's say, and they have reached roughly this point, so an advance of roughly 800 to 900 meters in the direction of Orekhiv over the past few days. That's all the changes I can see along the front line. We see them getting active south of Orekhiv. Whether that's already the expected offensive in the Zaporizhzhia region, I cannot say at this point yet, but we see them gaining ground in the region where they have not advanced in quite a while. Overall, the situation has not changed though, but the Ukrainians are troubled with other things as well. There was recently in Politico an article about Ukraine's capacity to produce electric output, and at the beginning of the war it was at 37.6 gigawatts, and now it has dropped to 12.1 gigawatts in the summer of 2024, and that doesn't account for the recent strikes yet, so it's probably has further lowered since then, but the actual capacity at this very moment is unknown. We have something in partisan regards as well. There's or sabotage. There is the claim that Russia might have planned to send incendiary devices towards US bound planes. As from what I've seen, it's not proven yet, but the suspicion is here. But let's talk about the big event, obviously, of the past 24 hours. Trump has won his election quite significantly, likely gaining control with his party over both houses of the US Congress. This has led to international reactions. We have Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, congratulating him. You can pause the video here in case you're interested in what he wrote. We also have the former Russian president and right now the guy to basically say the mad stuff from the Russian side. He says that the objectives of the special military operation remain unchanged and will be achieved. So there's no giving way, at least from his part in this regard, that in the Russian aims. And we have an interesting claim here from Sasha Kotz, which is one of the Russian more famous mill bloggers. And he says Trump's victory will definitely not make things easier for us. He's smart and unpredictable, and this is dangerous, even though you can see he's generally in favor of him. I said, if you're interested in this as well, pause the video and read the comment for yourself. Now let's talk about the overall effect internationally. Putin is likely full of hope that this will make it easier for him in Ukraine. Iran, on the other hand, will be the exact opposite. They will remember what Trump did with the agreement in the nuclear agreement, with the sanctions that he enacted against Iran, and that he struck Qasem Soleimani with a drone and had him killed, something nobody dared to do before from the American side. So they should be in trouble, and they probably know it. And China will likely also be somewhat concerned. Now let's talk about the 24-hour peace plan that he claimed just recently in the Joe Rogan Experience. He once again said that he has a plan to make peace within 24 hours. But once again, he didn't give any details. I personally will try to see it everything from a positive way. Obviously, we can just say that he's a madman, that he's stupid, and so on. But I think it's more constructive to take it serious, or to try to take it serious and put it into some perspective. At least that's what I'm going to try. Now, my understanding of him is that he's hyperbolic basically in everything he says. He never says a mediocre thing. Something was mediocre, it's always the best or the worst. It's the biggest crowd, the biggest success, the biggest win, the most horrible person, the biggest defeat. There's nothing in between. He's hyperbolic to the degree, and I would probably understand the 24-hour piece as this as well, that he's simply exaggerating, that he means that this will be fairly fast in a very short time, that the peace will be achieved in a very short time. We have to say that peace in 24 hours or in a very short time can only be achieved when Ukraine agrees with it. Anders Puk Nielsen has made a nice video on his channel about this, where he explains and highlights it, that the US can sabotage a lot, but it still will be dependent on Ukraine to agree to a peace agreement, because they are not at the point where they have to capitulate just because the US say please do so. Right now, he can refuse to give Ukraine additional aid, and that would lead to their capitulation over time, very likely, unless the rest of the West does something significantly. But this would still take weeks or even months until Ukraine is willing to take a peace agreement, to sign a peace agreement, so the fighting would not stop within 24 hours. So this means that a fast peace is only possible if he gives something to both parties, and he's threatening both parties, and both has to be credible. Only this way is a way to achieve a negotiated settlement between the two of them, as both of them have requests and goals in this war that are not compatible with each other. So the only way to achieve an agreement between them is to basically force either, and that can be done with both offering something and threatening with something in the same way as well. So this would mean, if a fast peace is achieved due to Trump's maneuvering, this would mean that he has to give concessions towards Ukraine. Obviously, not necessarily territorial ones, but in regards to its safety, to its aid, or something like this. Otherwise, Ukraine will simply not sign up. A blueprint for all of this would be the Pompeo plan. We talked about it in the past. Mike Pompeo, who, according to some media reports, is likely going to be in the next cabinet of Donald Trump, whether as state secretary or as secretary of defense, or whether at all, we'll have to see. But he offered a plan and claimed that it's the Trump plan. but Trump never confirmed this, and that plan was basically to get 500 billions in credit for Ukraine, which they can use for military. They can use everything they buy wherever they want, so no more restrictions on attack camps and everything. This would lead to Ukraine being able to get conventionally stronger than Russia within a couple of years, and this would obviously lead to the Russians to achieve a willingness for negotiations on the Russian side, as they would be simply be forced to negotiate from a position of strength, which they have right now, in regards to a position of weakness, which they would be in a couple of years afterwards. So if the Pompeo plan turns out to be Trump's plan, then this is likely a plan that would be able to achieve something fairly fast. Pompeo mentioned that it would mean the demilitarization of the Crimean Peninsula, which means that it would stay Russian, obviously, and the acceptance of the so-called People's Republics in the East, but from my understanding, only in their original size from February 2022. Whether Russia is willing to give up all the rest of the conquered territory, which supposedly they have annexed as well, is a different story. So I have no idea how realistic this is. It doesn't feel too realistic unless the US pressure is credible enough and strong enough to actually force the Russians to give into that. But we have to see. Until today, Trump has not published any plan, if he has any at all. He claims that he has one, and just 2 or 3 days ago on the Joe Rogan Experience, he once again said, I'm going to keep it secret until I'm using it. So nobody knows. Actually, nobody knows who claims to know it. Those are all just expectations and guesses what he might do. We have to see that everything is possible right now. Obviously, a harsh reaction from the United States is possible as well. But I said it in the past quite a lot of times, and especially in the last year, that the Ukraine war is a European war, and Europe should not expect the US to basically be the fire brigade to solve everything for them. The European Union has a GDP of 1.9 trillion, no, of 19 trillion US dollars. If 1% of the European Union's GDP was used for Ukraine, this would roughly mean 190 billion. And that wouldn't include Norway, the UK, Japan, Canada, and South Korea as other aiding nations as well. And 190 billion a year would be more than twice what they've received so far per year. Because from the numbers I found, they roughly received 200 billions in the first year, 2 years and a half. So this would mean more or less a doubling of the aid to Ukraine for just 1% of GDP. And I did the calculation for Germany, as my main audience is German, and there it would mean 44 euros a month that would cost to pay for Ukraine to receive everything they basically would need in material means. And obviously, as we've seen in the past, we could expect Trump to sell every weaponry to Ukraine if the Europeans pay for this. So while Europe will likely or might use this as a way out of the war and have somebody to blame for it, for the defeat, at the same time, this could be avoided. This could have been avoided in the past if Europe had taken the situation serious enough, and if they would have been willing to do the necessary sacrifices. Even if Russia is satisfied after this aggressive war, which it's far from certain, there will still be the need to increase the military inside of Europe, both in fear of the US not coming to aid, and both as the Russians have shown to be an imperialistic power that is willing to do wars of conquest, and all of this will cost a lot of money as well. And if 10 million Ukrainians flee to Western Europe, a significant part of them will likely go to Germany as well, making the housing crisis much worse there, and they will cost a lot in welfare as well. So in the end, it would have been much cheaper to pay for Ukraine to win the war than to allow Russia to win it as well. But we'll have to see if the politicians are not willing to do the necessary sacrifices for this, then it will still end this way. In the end, we'll have to see. Not all is lost, I would say. I would not expect for any significant change under Kamala Harris. The good news is that the previous security, the security advisor of President Biden. Jake Sullivan is now finally gone. He's being made responsible mostly for the hesitant aid towards Ukraine and for the limitations in the usage of Western weapons. This is already a good news for Ukraine. What and to which degree Kamala Harris would have been willing to decide the war in Ukraine's favor is far from known, and now it's pure speculation as well. In the end, we'll have to see how much of what Trump says will actually happen and in which degree. As said, from what I've seen, he has not published a single concrete suggestion how he wants to achieve that war. It's only others talking and claiming that they know what he's planning, but from him we have not heard anything else. So in the end, we'll have to see what's coming. We have something in other regards too. Russia has sent 2 Iranian satellites into orbit. According to the reports, they're both of civilian nature, so not military. But military news we have as well. The German RCH-155 howitzers, self-propelled howitzers, will come later. The first ones will arrive in Ukraine in April of 2025. And there's a report that Taiwan apparently has handed over some of its old Hawk air defense systems indirectly towards Ukraine, so probably over the United States, and that they've performed well there. So it might be that Taiwanese air defense is currently helping protect Ukraine's airspace. But that was it from me for today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think that Trump will do with Ukraine, and how will all of this end? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.